$48 million. Maya Ellison heard the auctioneer say it once, but her mind refused to accept the number. On her laptop screen, a room full of strangers applauded as the painting her husband once called an expensive waste of canvas disappeared into somebody else's collection. Sold. The word landed harder than the price. Maya sat perfectly still on a paint-stained stool inside her Chicago studio, one hand pressed against the edge of the work table. Her fingers were trembling. Beside the laptop sat a thick gray folder from Rachel Kim, her divorce attorney. A white label was fixed across the front. Mercer v. Ellison. Financial hearing. 9 a.m. tomorrow. 8 hours from now, Maya would sit across from Caleb Mercer, the man who had spent years treating her paintings like evidence that she had failed at adulthood. Tonight, one of them had sold for $48 million. Her phone lit up. Rachel. Maya answered but said nothing. I just saw it, Rachel whispered. Are you okay? Maya looked around the studio. Half-empty coffee cup. Old brushes soaking in a glass jar. Paint under her fingernails. Nothing about the room had changed. Somehow, everything had. I do not know yet, she said. Across town, Caleb Mercer was halfway through dinner with two senior partners from Aldercrest Capital when his phone began vibrating against the white tablecloth. Once, twice, then again. He ignored it until the man sitting across from him glanced at his own screen. Caleb. Caleb looked up. What? The man turned his phone around. There was Maya's name beneath a photograph of Blue Sunday, the massive painting Caleb had complained about for months because it took up too much space in their house. Caleb read the headline, then read it again. 48 million? His colleague stared at him. Isn't that your wife? Something tightened behind Caleb's eyes. Ex-wife. The correction came too quickly. Their divorce was not even final. Caleb pushed his chair back and walked toward the restaurant lobby, already calling Thomas Keene, his attorney. Thomas answered on the fourth ring. Tell me you saw it. I saw it. Caleb lowered his voice. We need to change tomorrow. There was a pause. Change what? The hearing. The settlement. Whatever we have to change. Caleb, that is not how this works. Caleb glanced back toward the dining room, where both partners were pretending not to watch him. That painting was made during our marriage. We will discuss it in the morning. No, we discuss it tonight. What Caleb did not ask was whether Maya was okay. He did not ask how she felt watching years of invisible work suddenly become visible to the entire art world. He asked about the money. And that was the part Maya would remember. Because 6 months earlier, Caleb had stood in front of that exact painting, loosened his tie, stared at it for 5 seconds, and laughed. Maya, be serious. Nobody is ever paying real money for this. Then he pointed toward the canvas and added, I would not even waste money framing it. Maya had said nothing. Caleb mistook that silence for embarrassment. That was his first mistake. 6 months earlier, Maya was still awake at 1:17 in the morning, standing barefoot on the cold studio floor with a brush between her fingers. The rest of the townhouse was dark. Caleb had gone upstairs hours ago after answering 3 work calls through dinner, and Maya had learned not to ask whether he was coming back down. Blue Sunday filled most of the wall in front of her, nearly 7 feet wide, all deep cobalt, muted gold, and the outline of a black woman seated at a table surrounded by empty chairs. Maya stepped back, studying the left corner. Something was wrong there. Not technically wrong. Emotionally wrong. She mixed another shade and tried again. You were still working on that thing? Caleb's voice came from the doorway. Maya turned. He was wearing gray sweatpants and an old Northwestern sweatshirt, his phone still in his hand. I thought you were asleep. I was. He looked at the canvas. Until I smelled paint. I cracked the window. That is not really the point. Maya set the brush down. Caleb walked farther inside, careful not to touch anything. Years ago, he used to sit on the floor while she painted and bring her coffee. Now he entered the studio like it was a storage room he was paying too much to maintain. Julian Price emailed me again, Maya said. The curator? Yes. He wants to stop by next month. Caleb gave a tired little smile. Did he offer to buy something? That is not what curators do. So no. Maya looked back at the painting. She could have explained what Julian's interest meant. She could have told Caleb about the group exhibition Julian was putting together, or that 2 collectors had recently asked about her older work. But she knew where the conversation would end. Caleb needed numbers. Everything else sounded imaginary to him. How many years are you going to wait for somebody to care? He asked. Maya slowly turned around. There was no anger in his face. That made it worse. He sounded practical, almost concerned. People do care. Maya, your studio costs money. Supplies cost money. Insurance costs money. I am not trying to insult you. You usually say that right after insulting me. Caleb exhaled and checked his phone. I have a 7:30 meeting. I cannot do this tonight. He left before Maya could point out that he had started the conversation. For several minutes, she stood there listening to his footsteps disappear upstairs. Then she picked up her brush. She did not cry. She changed the empty chair nearest the woman from gold to gray. For the first time, the painting felt honest. The next morning, Caleb left before 7. Maya carried his coffee mug toward the kitchen and noticed his navy overcoat hanging over the back of a dining chair. She reached into the pocket for the car keys he was always misplacing. Her fingers touched thick paper instead. It was a business card. Thomas Keene, Family Law and Asset Division. Maya stared at it, trying to invent an innocent reason her husband needed a divorce attorney. Then she turned the card over. On the back, in Caleb's handwriting, were 4 words and a time. Call before Maya knows. Thursday for 30. The house suddenly felt unfamiliar. Maya checked the calendar on her phone. Thursday had been 3 days ago. She placed the card on the table exactly where Caleb would see it when he came home. Then, after a long moment, she picked it back up. She took a photograph, returned it to his pocket, and went upstairs to get dressed. Caleb believed Maya still did not know. For the first time in their marriage, she decided to let him believe it. Caleb waited 11 days before telling Maya he wanted a divorce. He chose a Tuesday evening, after dinner, while she was loading 2 coffee mugs into the dishwasher. I think we need to talk. Maya closed the dishwasher and turned around. Caleb remained beside the kitchen island with his suit jacket still on, as if this were another meeting he planned to finish before moving to the next thing. Okay. He seemed surprised by how calm she sounded. I have been thinking about this for a while. Maya knew exactly how long. She had photographed Thomas Keene's card, quietly copied the last 12 months of their joint financial statements, and scheduled a consultation with Rachel Kim, a family law attorney recommended by an old college friend. Caleb knew none of that. I do not think this marriage works anymore, he continued. We want different lives. Maya almost asked him when her life had become inconvenient to his, but she stopped herself. Is there someone else? No. His answer came without hesitation. This is not about another woman. I just think we have reached the end. Strangely, that hurt in a different way. There was no secret affair to blame. Caleb had simply looked at the life they built and decided she was the part he no longer wanted. 3 days later, Thomas Keene emailed the proposed settlement. Maya opened it at Rachel's office overlooking the Chicago River. The document was 28 pages long, but its message was simple. Caleb wanted the townhouse. He wanted his retirement accounts protected as far as legally possible. He wanted to preserve his interests in investments connected to Aldercrest Capital. Maya would receive cash, her personal belongings, and what the document described as artwork, studio materials, and related personal effects currently in her possession. Maya read that sentence twice. Rachel watched her from across the desk. What? Nothing. That is not a nothing face. Maya pushed the document toward her and tapped the line. 9 years. What do you mean? 9 years of work. He put it next to personal effects. Rachel leaned back. Caleb is presenting himself as the primary financial contributor. His position is that you have limited independent income and need a clean settlement that gives you enough cash to start over. Maya gave a quiet laugh. How generous. Do not sign anything. That evening, Caleb called. Did you get the proposal? I did. It is fair, Maya. According to who? According to reality. There it was. The voice he used when he wanted an opinion to sound like a fact. You need security, he said. Art has never given you that. Maya looked through the studio doorway at Blue Sunday. And you think you have? Silence filled the line. I am not going to fight with you. Good. Neither am I. She ended the call. The following afternoon, Rachel arrived at the townhouse with an appraiser to begin documenting marital property. They moved room by room until they reached the studio. The appraiser stopped at Blue Sunday. Has this been professionally valued? No, Maya said. Before he could continue, her phone rang from an unfamiliar Manhattan number. She almost ignored it. Maya Ellison? A woman asked when she answered. This is Claire Warren with Harrington and Vale. Julian Price sent us images of Blue Sunday. Maya glanced at Rachel. All right. We would like to discuss placing it in our upcoming contemporary sale. Maya tightened her grip on the phone. Caleb had spent years asking when somebody would care. Now somebody did. And they were not calling to compliment her. Claire Warren did not make promises. That was the first thing Maya liked about her. I want to be careful with expectations, she said over the phone. Interest is not the same thing as a sale. Maya walked slowly around Blue Sunday, studying the woman she had painted at the long table. What happens next? We inspect it in person. We verify provenance, exhibition history, condition, ownership. Then we talk numbers. Ownership. That word followed Maya into Rachel's office 2 days later. Rachel had already begun organizing photographs, receipts, old gallery emails, and tax records. Because you created Blue Sunday during the marriage, Caleb's attorneys are going to care about this, she said. That does not mean he owns your career. It means we document everything correctly. Maya nodded. She was tired of pretending legal details were somehow beneath art. Caleb certainly would not make that mistake. That weekend, Julian Price came to the townhouse with Claire and a specialist from Harrington and Vale. Julian was in his late 50s, soft-spoken, with silver glasses and the habit of standing farther away from paintings than everyone else. He stopped in front of Blue Sunday and stayed there. Caleb used to give it 5 seconds. Julian gave it almost 10 minutes. When did you start this? He finally asked. About 14 months ago. And the empty chairs? Maya hesitated. They were not empty at first. Julian looked at her. What changed? Maya glanced toward the kitchen, remembering dinners where Caleb spoke over her, corrected her stories, and introduced her as someone who used to be serious about art. I did, she said. Julian nodded once. He did not ask anything else. Claire moved closer to the canvas. We would like to take it to New York for evaluation. Maya's stomach tightened. Today. Only if you are comfortable. For years, Maya had imagined someone discovering her work. She had never imagined discovery would feel so much like letting something private leave home. That evening, Caleb arrived while the art handlers were securing the crate near the front door. He stopped halfway inside. What is going on? Maya signed the transportation form. Blue Sunday is going to New York. For what? Auction evaluation. Caleb stared at the crate, then at the two handlers. You are selling it. Maybe. His expression shifted. Not impressed. Annoyed. You cannot start moving assets around in the middle of a divorce. Rachel stepped out of the studio before Maya could answer. She is not moving assets around. Everything is being disclosed. Caleb recognized her immediately. You are her attorney. Rachel Kim. I know who you are. He looked back at Maya. What did they value it at? Maya held his gaze. They have not. Caleb gave a short laugh. So this could all be nothing. Julian was standing near the doorway. Caleb apparently had not noticed him. It could, Julian said. Caleb turned. Julian extended his hand. Julian Price. Caleb's confidence flickered for half a second. He knew the name. I have seen your interviews. Then you know I do not usually travel for nothing. Nobody spoke. The handlers lifted the crate and carried it outside. Caleb watched it disappear into the truck. 3 weeks later, Maya was eating lunch in Rachel's conference room when Claire called. We completed the preliminary review, she said. There is serious interest. Maya put down her fork. What does serious mean? Claire paused. It means we are recommending a 7-figure estimate. Maya forgot about the food in front of her. Rachel was already reaching for a legal pad. Claire continued. And there is something else. We showed the work privately to a small group of qualified collectors. Okay. One of them wants to discuss a guarantee. Rachel looked up sharply. Maya did not understand why until Claire added. If that happens, Blue Sunday will enter the auction with a buyer effectively committed before the first public bid. Maya stared through the window at the river below. Somewhere across Chicago, Caleb still believed this was probably nothing. He was about to receive the disclosure that proved otherwise. The disclosure reached Caleb at 9:12 on Monday morning, halfway through an investment committee meeting at Aldercrest Capital. Thomas Keene had forwarded the documents with one sentence. Call me when you can speak privately. Caleb waited until the meeting ended, walked into his office, and opened the attachment. He skipped past the transportation records and condition report until he found the preliminary estimate. Then he stopped. He read the range again before calling Thomas. This is serious? Serious enough that we should not dismiss it. It is one painting. One painting with documented market interest. Caleb turned toward the windows overlooking downtown Chicago. Maya has never sold anything close to that. Markets change. Not that fast. Thomas paused. Do not contact her about the money. Caleb frowned. Why? Because we are in active settlement negotiations, and I would prefer that you not create an email or text message I have to explain later. Caleb ended the call without promising anything. That afternoon, Maya was in her studio wrapping smaller works when her phone rang. She saw Caleb's name and almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. Hello. I heard about the estimate. No congratulations. No question about how the evaluation had gone. Maya leaned against the work table. Rachel disclosed it this morning. I think we should talk. We are talking. Not like this. In person. Maya looked at the blank rectangle on the wall where Blue Sunday had hung. About what? About handling this correctly. She nearly smiled. Correctly for who? Caleb lowered his voice. Maya, if the auction house has real buyers, there are tax issues, ownership issues, timing issues. I deal with transactions for a living. This is not one of your transactions. I am trying to help you. You told me nobody would pay real money for it. Silence. Then Caleb said, I was frustrated when I said that. You said things like that for years. Fine. I underestimated the market. Maya noticed the wording immediately. Not her. The market. Caleb continued. Whatever happens between us, we should be smart about this together. There is no together anymore, Caleb. That was your decision. She ended the call before he could turn the conversation into another presentation. 2 days later, Maya flew to New York with Rachel for a private preview at Harrington and Vale. Blue Sunday hung alone against a wide white wall under museum lighting. Seeing it there unsettled her. In the townhouse, it had always seemed too large, almost apologetic for taking up space. Here, people stepped back to make room for it. Claire approached with Julian. We have had more inquiries, she said, including institutional interest. Rachel asked, what happened with the guarantee? We have one proposal, but I do not recommend accepting it yet. Maya looked at her. Why not? Claire glanced toward the painting. Because 2 other parties entered the conversation this morning. Maya felt her heartbeat quicken. Who? I cannot give you names, but one is a private collector. The other is North River Contemporary Art Trust. Julian smiled faintly. They do not chase many emerging artists. Before Maya could answer, Rachel's phone buzzed. She read the message and her expression changed. Caleb's side just requested a revised valuation of all your artwork. Maya looked at Blue Sunday, then back at Rachel. 3 weeks ago, it was personal effects. Apparently it matters now. That evening, Caleb sent Maya a text. Congratulations. I always knew you had talent. Maya stared at the message, then typed one question. Which painting of mine was always your favorite? The typing bubble appeared, vanished, appeared again, then disappeared for good. Maya locked her phone. Across the room, Claire was speaking quietly with a specialist who had just entered carrying a folder. She walked toward Maya a moment later. The North River Trust increased its guarantee offer. To what? Claire handed her the paperwork instead of answering. Maya looked at the number and stopped breathing for a second. The auction was still 3 weeks away, and somebody was already willing to risk more money on Blue Sunday than Caleb had ever believed Maya could earn in a lifetime. 3 weeks later, Maya did not go to the auction room. She stayed in Chicago. At 7:40 that evening, she sat in her studio with Rachel beside her and the Harrington and Vale livestream open on an old laptop. Rachel had brought takeout from a Thai place down the block, but neither woman had touched it. You can still turn this off, Rachel said. Maya shook her head. If strangers are going to decide what something I made is worth, I should probably hear them do it. Blue Sunday appeared on the screen. For a moment, Maya barely recognized it. The auctioneer introduced the work, mentioned the private interest, then opened the bidding. The first number was already higher than anything Maya had earned from art in a single year. A phone bidder answered. Another bidder came in from the room. The price climbed. 8 million. 11 million. 15. Maya stopped watching the number and watched the painting instead. She remembered mixing that gray chair at 1 in the morning while Caleb slept upstairs. She remembered wondering whether she was wasting her life. 22 million, the auctioneer called. Rachel quietly put down her pen. Maya, do not say anything yet. At 28 million, one bidder dropped out. At 34, another entered through a specialist on the phone. The room changed. Even through the laptop speakers, Maya could hear it. Conversations disappeared. Nobody was casually watching anymore. 39 million. 42. Then 46. The auctioneer waited, eyes fixed toward someone beyond the camera. 48 million. A long pause followed. Maya could hear her own breathing. At $48 million. Another pause. Sold. Rachel covered her mouth. Maya did not move. The applause came through the laptop speakers, strangely distant, as if it belonged to somebody else's life. You did that, Rachel finally said. Maya looked at her. I painted it. They did that. Her phone began lighting up almost immediately. Claire. Julian. An old professor. Two numbers she did not recognize. Then Caleb. Maya watched his name appear and let the first call go unanswered. He called again 7 minutes later. This time she picked up. Congratulations, he said. His voice was controlled, but she could hear something underneath it. Thank you. 48 million. I heard. Maya, this changes things. She looked at the gray divorce folder beside her laptop. For you. That is not fair. What part? You know what I mean. We have a hearing tomorrow. There are financial implications here. Maya closed her eyes for a moment. Not because his words hurt. Because they clarified something she had spent years trying not to understand. Did you call because you wanted to know how I am doing? Caleb said nothing. That is what I thought. Maya, do not make this personal. She almost laughed. It is my painting, my marriage, and my divorce. What exactly would you call personal? We need to talk before tomorrow. Talk to Thomas. She ended the call. Rachel's phone buzzed before Maya could set hers down. She opened an email, and the warmth left her expression. What happened? Maya asked. Rachel turned the screen toward her. Thomas just filed an emergency request concerning the sale proceeds. Maya read the first paragraph. Caleb was asking the court to preserve and classify the auction proceeds as marital property, pending further review. Can he do that? He can ask. Rachel scrolled through the filing, then suddenly stopped. Wait. What? Rachel leaned closer to the screen. They attached an older financial schedule to support their argument. Maya moved beside her. Several lines down was a category Caleb himself had approved months before filing for divorce. Artwork by Maya Ellison. Estimated resale value. Negligible. Rachel looked at Maya. He wants the court to believe the same paintings were worthless when that helped him, and marital assets worth millions now that one sold. Maya stared at Caleb's signature at the bottom of the page. The hearing was less than 12 hours away. And without realizing it, Caleb had just handed Rachel the first document she needed. By 10:30 that night, Rachel had stopped looking at the auction result entirely. The $48 million was no longer the most interesting number in the room. She sat at Maya's work table with Caleb's financial schedule open beside 3 older emails recovered from the divorce disclosures. Look at the dates, Rachel said. Maya pulled her chair closer. The first email had been sent 4 months before Caleb told her he wanted a divorce. It was addressed to his financial planner. Caleb had written that Maya's paintings had no meaningful secondary market and should be treated as household personal property for preliminary asset planning. The second email went further. He described her art income as inconsistent and unlikely to become material. Maya read the sentence twice. He was planning all of this while we were still having breakfast together. Rachel did not soften it. Yes. That landed differently than discovering the attorney's business card. Back then, Maya had still wondered whether Caleb was confused, unhappy, maybe even scared. Now she could see the timeline in black and white. While she was working late in the studio, he had already started turning their marriage into columns. Does this mean he gets nothing from the sale? Maya asked. No, I am not going to tell you something just because it feels good to hear. Rachel pointed toward the filing. The painting was created during the marriage. The court still has to deal with classification, ownership interests, proceeds, and the rest of the marital estate under the law. But this creates a credibility problem for Caleb. Because he called it worthless. Because he wanted one version of reality when he thought that version benefited him. Now he wants another. Maya leaned back. So tomorrow is not about proving he was cruel to me. No, Rachel closed the folder. And that is good. We do not need to prove what kind of husband he was. We need to show the court what he represented financially, when he represented it, and why his position suddenly changed. At 7:15 the next morning, Maya was dressed and ready when another email arrived from Thomas Keene. Revised settlement proposal. Rachel called immediately. Do not respond. I was not going to. Good. I am coming downstairs. Maya opened the attachment anyway. Caleb was suddenly willing to let her keep the townhouse. He proposed a more favorable division of several investment accounts. There was language about resolving the auction proceeds privately and avoiding unnecessary public dispute. 6 months earlier, he had offered her enough money to start over. Now, hours before the hearing, he was offering her the house he once insisted he had earned. Rachel arrived 10 minutes later and read the proposal in Maya's kitchen. He wants certainty. Maya poured coffee into a travel mug. He wants control. Probably both. Rachel looked at her carefully. We can ask for time to negotiate. You do not have to prove anything today. Maya thought about it, then shook her head. I am tired of decisions being made in rooms before I know the meeting exists. At 8:40, they entered the courthouse downtown. Caleb was already there beside Thomas, wearing a charcoal suit Maya had helped him choose 2 years earlier. His eyes found her immediately. For the first time since the separation, he walked toward her instead of waiting for her to come to him. Maya, can we have 5 minutes? Rachel started to speak, but Maya raised one hand. Right here. Caleb glanced at the people moving through the hallway. I do not want this getting ugly. Maya studied him. Then why did you file something at 11 o'clock last night? His jaw tightened. Because $48 million changes the situation. No, Caleb. It changed your interest in the situation. Thomas called his name from behind him. A clerk opened the courtroom doors. Caleb lowered his voice. You know I supported you for years. Maya felt something inside her become very still. There it was. Not an apology. An invoice. Rachel touched Maya lightly on the elbow. We are up. Maya walked toward the courtroom without answering. Behind her, Thomas handed Caleb a folder and whispered something that made him stop cold. Rachel had filed a response before sunrise. Attached to it were Caleb's own emails, his original valuation, and the financial schedule bearing his signature. In a few minutes, he would have to explain all 3 to the judge. The judge did not look impressed by $48 million. That surprised Caleb more than anything. Judge Marjorie Feldman adjusted her glasses, reviewed the filings, and looked toward Thomas Keene. Mr. Keene, your client is asking this court to preserve the proceeds from the sale pending classification. I understand that request. What I do not understand is the valuation history. Thomas stood. Your Honor, the market value of the artwork changed dramatically after the original disclosures. Clearly, she lifted one page. But this document was prepared before the divorce filing, correct? Yes. And Mr. Mercer approved it? Yes. Caleb sat motionless beside him. Across the aisle, Maya kept her attention on Rachel's legal pad. She had expected satisfaction. Instead, she felt strangely detached. Hearing strangers discuss Blue Sunday as an asset reminded her how easily something personal could become a number once lawyers entered the room. Thomas continued. No one could reasonably have anticipated last night's sale. Rachel stood. We agree, Your Honor. We are not suggesting Mr. Mercer should have predicted an auction result. The issue is that he repeatedly relied on Mrs. Ellison's lack of market success when presenting her financial contribution as insignificant, then changed his position immediately after the sale. Judge Feldman looked toward Rachel. You are not arguing that the proceeds automatically belong entirely to your client. No, Your Honor. We are asking for consistent treatment, complete accounting, and proper valuation of the entire marital estate. Caleb glanced at Maya. That was not the argument he had prepared himself to fight. Rachel was not asking the judge to punish him. She was asking the numbers to tell the same story from beginning to end. Then Thomas made a mistake. Mr. Mercer financially supported Mrs. Ellison's artistic pursuits throughout the marriage. Maya looked up. Rachel did too. Your Honor, Rachel said. If counsel is raising support for Mrs. Ellison's career as a contribution, then we would ask that the court also consider Mrs. Ellison's documented unpaid contributions that allowed Mr. Mercer to build his. Thomas went still. Rachel opened another folder. Travel calendars. Corporate dinners Maya had hosted. 2 relocations tied to Caleb's career. Household records from the years he routinely worked 70-hour weeks. And 1 email Caleb had written to an Aldercrest partner years earlier. Maya is the reason I can keep this schedule. She handles everything I cannot. Caleb recognized it immediately. He had forgotten it existed. Maya had not. The judge reviewed the documents without comment for several moments. It appears both parties contributed to this marriage in ways that were not accurately reflected in the initial proposal. That sentence changed the room. Not because Maya had suddenly won everything. She had not. But the story Caleb brought into the divorce, that he built the valuable life while Maya merely occupied it, no longer held together. The court ordered the auction proceeds preserved temporarily, required updated valuations across the marital estate, and directed both sides back into settlement discussions with full disclosure. Outside the courtroom, Caleb caught up with Maya near the elevators. Maya, she stopped. Rachel continued ahead, giving them space without going far. Caleb looked exhausted for the first time she could remember. I was wrong about you. Maya studied his face. Months earlier, those words might have meant everything. Now they sounded incomplete. No, she said quietly. You were wrong about what you thought gave you the right to measure me. Caleb looked down. I did support you. Sometimes you did. And sometimes I supported you. That was supposed to be marriage, Caleb. Not a debt one of us could collect later. The elevator doors opened. Maya stepped inside. Caleb did not follow. For what it is worth, he said, I am sorry. Maya held his gaze until the doors began closing. I hope someday you understand what you were sorry for. The doors shut between them. Rachel was waiting downstairs with her phone in her hand. We have another development. Maya gave her a tired look. Please tell me nobody found another $48 million. Rachel almost smiled. No. Harrington and Vale received an inquiry this morning. About what? Not Blue Sunday. She turned the screen toward Maya. 3 of your unsold paintings. Maya stared at the names. They were works Caleb had never even bothered to ask about. From North River? No, Rachel shook her head. A museum. For the first time, Maya understood that the auction might not have been the ending everyone thought it was. It might have been the beginning. 10 months later, Maya stood in a studio with 12-foot windows and morning light spilling across a concrete floor. The space was larger than the room she once painted in after midnight. But she had brought one thing from the old townhouse with her, the paint-stained wooden stool Caleb always wanted her to throw away. It sat beside a new canvas, scratched, uneven, and completely out of place among the clean white walls. Maya liked it that way. The divorce had been finalized 4 months earlier. There had been no dramatic victory where one person walked away with everything. The auction proceeds were handled through the settlement after taxes, fees, ownership questions, and the rest of the marital estate were properly accounted for. Maya kept her copyrights, control over her future work, and enough financial independence to never confuse security with permission again. Caleb kept his career at Aldercrest Capital and moved into a condo downtown. They communicated only when necessary. The museum inquiry Rachel mentioned outside the courthouse became something bigger. 3 paintings were selected for an exhibition on contemporary American portraiture, and Harrington and Vale introduced Maya to galleries that had suddenly learned how to pronounce her name correctly. That part amused her more than she admitted. One Thursday afternoon, Julian Price stopped by while Maya was working. He studied the unfinished canvas in silence. You know everybody is going to ask what this one is worth, he said. Maya kept mixing paint. I know. Does that bother you? She thought about it. Not anymore. Julian smiled. Good answer. It is not an answer. I just do not know. Even better. After he left, Maya checked her phone and found an email from Caleb. Final paperwork attached. Thank you for signing. I hope you are doing well. She read it once. There was a time when 4 words from Caleb could change the temperature of her entire day. Praise could lift her. Disapproval could hollow her out. Silence could keep her awake wondering what she had done wrong. Now his message was simply a message. Maya replied, received. Thank you. Then she closed her laptop. On a shelf near the window sat an old index card she had found while packing the townhouse. Caleb had written it years earlier after complaining about the cost of her supplies. Maybe paint something people would actually buy? Maya had nearly thrown it away. Instead, she kept it, not as proof that Caleb had been wrong, but as proof of something more uncomfortable. For too long, she had believed he might be right. That was the wound money could never heal for her. $48 million could buy freedom, time, lawyers, a beautiful studio, and choices she once thought were impossible. But money could not return the years she spent waiting for someone else to confirm that her work mattered. Only Maya could stop giving those years away. She picked up the index card, turned it over, and wrote one sentence on the blank side. Make it because it is yours to make. Then she placed it back on the shelf with those words facing outward. Maya returned to the unfinished canvas. There were no bidders waiting, no auctioneer, no husband standing behind her asking what the work could earn. Just afternoon light, wet paint, and a woman finally working without asking permission to take up space. She lifted her brush and made the next mark. Maybe the painting would someday sell for millions. Maybe it would hang in a museum. Maybe nobody would want it at all. For the first time, none of those possibilities changed what happened next. Maya kept painting, because the most dangerous thing Caleb had ever convinced her to believe was not that her art had no value. It was that somebody else had the right to decide whether she did. And sometimes the greatest revenge is not watching the person who underestimated you regret it. It is reaching a place where their regret no longer matters.